This is going to be a CDC Midge spent wing pattern. You're going to tie this up really small. So I've got a size 18 hook in my vise, and that's as big as I would go. I'm probably more commonly going to be tying this at a 20 or a 22. And the body of this is going to be just the thread itself. And so this is one of those ones where you want to use some thread control. I've got my hook situated here in my vise slanting down, and that just is going to allow me to get down deep around the bend of the hook without it sliding as much. But once I have the body pretty much done, I'm going to reposition the hook here in my vise. So what I'm doing now is I'm turning my thread counterclockwise, which is going to flatten it out a little bit because we want very thin profile on this. And so I will be somewhat careful in touching wraps here, but also continuing to rotate my thread, my bobbin counterclockwise here. We're going to take this quite a ways around the bend of the hook here. Maybe one or two more. Or three. Once I'm about there, I'm going to reverse course with my thread, and I'm going to spin it clockwise. And what that's going to do is it's going to tighten up that thread. Rather than being flat and laying out, it's going to kind of tighten it into a nice tight rope for us. And we're going to take that and we're going to use it to take pretty open wraps moving up, back up towards the eye. And what it's going to do is create a kind of a really nice hint of a ribbing. All just using the thread, flattening it out and then tightening it up. So there we go. We've got our body done. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shift my hook. So I'm going to open up my vise a little bit and pivot my hook upwards. And what I'm looking for here is to try to get the eye pretty close to level here. So next I'm going to turn to some CDC. We're using just a light gray dun color here. I've taken one of the CDC feathers out. I've stripped the fibers on the bottom of it, and I've kind of separated at the top, the tip of the feather and the rest of the feather. And we're going to clip this tip off pretty close like that. So I'm going to take my CDC feather here, holding it by the stem, and I am going to get that secured right on the top of the shank of the hook here with just a couple of thread wraps. That's all that it's going to take. From there, I'm going to start pulling on this material. And I want to pull it until the stem is no longer over the eye of the hook. So you'll want to be somewhat careful as you do this. So I'm taking my time just to make sure I don't pull this feather completely off, because that's not what I'm trying to do. And once I've got a few wraps there, we'll go ahead and stand this up a little bit as well, pulling those fibers up front backwards. We'll throw in a few jam knots kind of right up against that to help it stand up a little bit. I'm not going to cut this off because we're going to end up using that a little bit for our wing case. So I'm just going to go ahead and let my thread travel back on the back side of that CDC wing here. So I've just grabbed some mahogany superfine dubbing. It's just a rich brown color. We're going to use this material to make a thorax on our pattern here, and you don't want to overdo it, so superfine is always good for that. You can dub it on really nice and tight, and it stays nice and tight. We're just going to build up this little ball behind the wing, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull that wing backwards, and we're going to take a few thread wraps in front as well. So we're just about like that. Now at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to look straight down on the material because I want it to be separated about half and half. Half on one side of the hook, shaft of the hook, and half on the other side. You won't get it perfect, but something like that. From here I'm just going to take the stem and I'm going to pull that up over the eye. And it's going to help if you can kind of stroke these other fibers backwards while you do that. And what that's going to do is this is going to really separate those two sides. Then I'm just going to go ahead and secure this right on the top of the shank of the hook here with a couple of thread wraps. And then with that, I'm going to come in and I'm going to try to clip this off as close as I possibly can. Well, once we're that far, we'll just go ahead and grab our whip finisher. We'll take a 3 or 4 turn. You don't want too pronounced of a head, but it doesn't hurt to have a little bit there. So I've got that whip finished and I've got it kind of pulled tight for me. I'm just going to take my back end of my whip finisher, which is a cutting tool, and I'm just going to release my thread by cutting it right off just like that. We're going to finish the pattern by holding these wings up, and I'm going to cut them on a pretty steep angle. You know, something around like that. And then I can go ahead and start situating those wings on either side so that they kind of spread out a little bit. And once you have those clipped to about where you want them, that's all there is to the fly. It's a great pattern. A spent wing, CDC Midge. Hopefully you can see the nice wings that those CDC fibers make with a nice black rid Midge body. Throw a hook in the vise and give this one a shot.